Well, welcome everybody. Good evening. Welcome back to Fixfest 2020, Fixfest UK 2020. In the 4 sessions so far, we've explored the role of repair to bring people together, to circulate skills and value locally, and help communities and individuals pave the way to a better future. We've also explored the state of right to repair in the UK. And in the previous session, we talked about the many repair networks going across the UK and how we could work together to strengthen those. And we've also taken a deep dive into the world of capacitors. And if you're interested in any of those previous sessions, we will be releasing recordings in the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for those. But today, I'm delighted to welcome Claire Seek and John McCrory, who will be leading us in a discussion about how to run good online events for adult learners, particularly pertinent topic at the moment. But before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. So please note that all sessions are recorded and we will be sharing those recordings in the next couple of weeks. So you don't have to appear on camera or microphone if you don't want to. You can just use the text chat if that's more comfortable for you. But do remember that all sessions are being recorded. You can control your camera and microphone with the 2 buttons at the bottom left of the video that you're seeing me now. If you're on a small screen, you might need to scroll down to see those. And please, can you make sure that when you're not speaking, that you have yourself muted with your microphone. And in this main room, please make sure your camera is off to help save bandwidth for people with connections. We will tonight be using breakout rooms. These are other rooms that we will ask people to move into at some point, and John and Claire will explain how to do those at the time. In those rooms, please don't mute yourself. Please do enable your camera and microphone and get involved. Those sessions will be very much about talking with each other, having discussions. Obviously, if you're not comfortable with your camera on, you may use the text chat, which you can find to the right of your video at the moment. Feel free to use that chat at any time to ask questions, make comments, or ask for help if you're having technical difficulties. Do bear in mind that that chat can sometimes freeze at the moment. So if you don't see any messages for a number of minutes, or you can't send messages yourself, it may be that you need to refresh the page in order to get the chat working again. Apologies about this, we're working on it behind the scenes, so it won't be a problem soon, but today it's just worth bearing that in mind. For more in-depth notes, questions and discussion, we also have an Etherpad where we'll be taking notes. Can somebody post a link to that in the chat now? Please open that in a new tab and add your name to the attendees list at the top. And then at any point, feel free to go in and add any comments or thoughts or questions that you have. Questions go under the talking stack section near the top. And we'll use that as a kind of cue. So if you have questions for Claire or John or about any of the topics raised tonight, do add your name there and feel free to type your question, and we'll work through those in order and make sure that everyone's questions are answered. If you need technical support at any point, if you find the tools aren't working, there is a question mark button at the very top right of your screen. You can click that at any time to access the on-call technical support, who will be able to help you troubleshoot the issue, and hopefully we'll get you back in the discussion quickly. Finally, we're thankful to Nesta and DCMS, who funded both editions of Fixfest UK, first back in 2018 and this in 2020. Okay, so without further ado, I'd love to hand over to Claire and John. For a bit of context, Claire is the coordinator of Repair Cafe Portsmouth, which has been running repair events in the city for about 2 years now, and is also helping to spark new repair groups in the area. John is a director and fixer at Repair Cafe Wales, having started out as a volunteer back in 2017. Outside of his volunteering with Repair Cafe Wales, John lectures in mechanical engineering at Cardiff University. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to John and Claire. The floor is yours.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the session. If you can't hear me, and my mouth is just moving right now, then type something in the chat so that I don't look too silly. But yes, this session, welcome, like I say, is titled Quality Online Engagement with Adult Learners, where we are going to be learning, you guessed it, how to engage effectively with adult learners in an online environment. The session is split into 3 main sections, each of which has an activity. We'll be starting off talking about the audience, so that's adult learners. We'll then look at the kind of blueprints or steps, like a best practice guide for how you can design your own workshop. And then in the 3rd section, we will use what we've just talked about to start designing our own workshops, focused on kind of your area of interest. Maybe that's fixing or something similar. And then finally, there'll be a bit at the end, just talking about how to be a good facilitator or host. But that one's quite easy. Just avoid doing anything I do, and you'll be fine. Yes, as we mentioned, we've already brought up the Etherpad, so I just had a few notes to add there. Basically, Claire, who is the other host of this session, is going to be facilitating that in quite a big way. So hopefully, Claire, you'll be on call to bring things into the discussion when they're most relevant. And as James mentioned, I was asked to be involved because I'm one of the directors over at Repair Cafe Wales, and we've run a few online repair workshops during the lockdown. And then also over at my work with the university, we've had to take our teaching online. So that's another kind of area of the online teaching which I've had some exposure to, but I'm by no means an expert. So for our repair workshops we effectively just made it up as we went along, just did what kind of intuitively seemed like the right thing to do, but had no real guide. So when I agreed to do this workshop, I decided that I should research what is actually the right way to do it so I could deliver something cohesive. Hopefully this is cohesive. So what I did is I read through online. There are lots of guides on how to teach adults. I read guides on how to design workshops, and also guides on how to run events online. And I sort of amalgamated all of those into a single guide, which is about creating effective online workshops or learning sessions in environments for adults. And then I used that to create the design for this session. So it all became a bit meta. But yeah, so we're like I said, we're not professionals, and we've just tried a few things. So some things will work and some things might not. So that's a learning experience though. So you can take away from that what you really like or dislike from this. And as I mentioned, I've got this guide which I am intending to send to anyone who wants it. So in the Etherpad, under the attendees list, there's a little kind of prompt to say that if you would like a copy of the guide, then just write that you would like a copy of the guide, and we will work out some way to send that to you. And also, yes, hopefully throughout this workshop, we'll actually be generating lots of ideas of our own to add to that guide. So the idea is we capture that in the Etherpad, and then I add that in with the document I've already got, and then we can send that out. So yeah, I've just talked to you loads. So why don't, Claire, are you able to introduce yourself?
Hello, yes. Hope you can see me. Can you hear me? Great. Hi, everyone. So as James mentioned, I set up Repair Cafe Portsmouth a couple of years ago, and I'm really passionate about getting people to understand that repair is even a possibility and help educate people in passing on skills and connecting people up. Now, obviously, things have changed a little bit with COVID-19, so I was really interested to find out how we could really effectively get adults to learn online. And I'm hoping that we probably would take some of this learning into the offline world as well. We shall see. That's me.
Great, thank you. Good, yeah, good point about the taking it back offline when we eventually go there. So yes, without kind of further ado, let's kick things off, because I would like to get you engaged and doing something as soon as possible. So our first activity, as I already mentioned, will be looking at our audience. because that's always a good place to start when you want to design any activity, event, or workshop. So our audience is adult learners, which is, it might seem like an incredibly broad category. It probably is the category that comprises most of the human population on Earth, but surprisingly there are quite a lot of similarities in how adults generally like to learn. So for activity 1, we're going to be splitting you into smaller groups, and you'll be going into these breakout rooms. I'll give a little bit more instruction on how to do that momentarily. And in each of your rooms, you're going to be given a list of statements about adult learners and their preferences. Now, I'm going to try and do a screen share to bring that up now while I'm talking. That seems like a sensible thing to do. There we go. All right, so if I do that, so I hope that's clear. Claire, please let me know if it isn't, because I can only see this PowerPoint slide now. And yes, so here are 5 statements about adult learners taken from my online learning. So number 1, effective learning for adults recognizes, respects, and capitalizes on the knowledge that they bring to the table. Number 2, adults learn best when they make their own meaning, so allow them to generate their own ideas from the information presented in the course. Number 3 is that learning is enhanced if we give students a chance to reflect and use the material delivered during the session. 4 is that adults who usually have very little free time among their many responsibilities and obligations learn best when the experience is fun. And number 5 is that adult learners are problem focused and learn best when they can relate the content to their own situation or work. So I'm going to close that for a moment. I just wanted to bring those up so you know that that's the list. But they're in no particular order at the moment. Activity 1, what you're going to be doing is, in your groups, talk about that list of kind of traits of adult learners, and using your own experiences, reflect upon them and try and order them in what you think is the kind of order priority or importance. And more than that, using your experiences, because believe it or not, you are all adult learners. You will have learnt, and you can add to that list things which you think are helpful or could be applied to adults in general when we're talking about how they prefer to learn. So that is the scope for task number 1, which is why I said it would be great if you had a pen and paper so you can kind of jot things down. And then afterwards, we'll come back to the main room and we'll have a discussion about the ideas that you've generated. And during that discussion, Claire will be adding them to the Etherpad. That's the plan anyway. All right, so discussion session number 1, sort of feedback really from the individual discussions that each group had. So I haven't really got a plan for this. We've never done this before, and I've never really facilitated an online event of this nature. So why don't we start with numerical order of breakout room 1 from in the chat. So that is Pen, Karis, Lee, Becca, Francis, Cresswell. So if that room, if someone from there, or a few of you even, would like to be so kind as to come forth and kind of maybe share which 2 of the list you thought were the highest in priority and why, and then maybe share also one idea that you had to add to the list. Hey, Karis.
Hey, we did get in that room and we did have a good old look around, and we were ordering all of those things in order. We didn't really get around to having a discussion about it, but what we did note was that all of us, as Ugo mentioned, had very different orders, but we didn't get to the point of discussing it, so I'm very sorry.
Well, why don't you share your reasoning then for your top 2 now?
Because what I think is from the list is, I think using learnings during a session is incredibly helpful, and I think making things fun, apart from the fact that it's just fun, I do think that helps people learn things more effectively. And I was mentioning to me and Ros, were having a discussion about fixers at Repair Cafe, for example, having the flexibility to have a crack at something they've never done before with not many restrictions. So they're given the sort of creativity and the space to just have a crack at fixing something. So I guess that's where we had a thing.
Yeah, that's really good and really good points as well, especially linking it back to Repair Cafe events. So I like that idea. It's kind of like a sand pit, if you know the term. You know, you just got all these tools and the people with expertise to help you. So yeah, pretty neat. Did you have any did you think of anything? Obviously you were ordering, but did you think of anything new from your own experiences, or did you not get that far? It's fine either way.
I didn't quite get that far. I just think some of those things just really hammered home when I was thinking about repairing events. Just the fun and flexibility just kept jumping out for me.
Cool. No, brilliant. Thanks very much for sharing. That's good. You can turn the camera. Yeah. Sweet. So yeah, I guess actually we didn't really do like a real icebreaker. Maybe you did your own in a way when you might have introduced yourselves in your breakout rooms, but I hope everyone feels comfortable and to talk, because it's obviously a pretty friendly group of people we got here, and we're all just trying to figure it out and learn, and this is all very opinionated anyway. So there's no wrong answer. So if someone from breakout room number 2 would like to come forth, so we have in there, we've got Pandemary, Mark Hillard, Steve Cousins, Rosie Steedman, and James. So if anyone from there wants to do a little chat, we should have asked you actually to designate someone to come forth, but it's fine if a few of you want to talk at the same time, actually, just avoiding talking over each other.
Okay, feel free to chip in, everybody, because I'll probably miss some stuff. So we had a good chat. We kind of did a round of introductions, which took up probably about half our time because we got a bit carried away. But it was good to kind of meet everybody. We kind of actually came to a consensus around number 5 being, for us, the kind of most important of the statements. So just for reference, number 5 was adult learners are problem focused and learn best when they can relate the content to their own situation or work. Yeah, I mean, I think the reasons that shared, certainly in my experience, I think I find this when I'm kind of learning, if I can apply it to something that I kind of have experienced or am experiencing, it definitely helps. And I think others in the group found the same. Panda, I believe that you said that was probably true for you as well. Again, feel free to add or correct me in the chat, anybody. And we've kind of had a wider discussion about how learning kind of works at these types of events, and why we're focusing specifically on learning at the moment.
Great. Well, something actually that you said, that number 5, applying it to your own kind of field or work, is something that we've actually already seen in this first discussion, and in fact, as I was jumping through the rooms as well, because one of the first things I heard people discussing was the learning in relation to, say, Repair Cafe events. So that's something they're familiar with, right? So I think we almost do it instinctively, that point number 5, relating it back to something that you're involved in, I guess. Yeah, really good. Let's strike 1 for that. Good. Yeah, were there any newer ideas that came through? Sorry, as you left there.
I'm not really sure we had the time to kind of get around to new ideas, actually. We were kind of focused on quite a lot of big ideas in the 5 that were there. So we were kind of grappling with those.
That's great. Thanks very much. And I'll have a look now. So if anyone from breakout room number 3 would like to come forth, we've got here Joe, Ian, and Neil. My list is just new. So.
Isn't it? I'm definitely not going to summarise this very well. More of a personal conclusion. I thought they were all quite important. And just depends on what you want to do. You've got to have a good audience, that you've got an idea of what they want, otherwise you're not going to develop the right content. There was some discussion about having objectives for it, clear objectives that people, when you publish it, advertise it, will identify with and say, yeah, I do want to come along and learn about that. There was one of my suggestions for something that could be added was to say that what we were doing was one of them, which is to be interactive, so keep people engaged rather than death by PowerPoint. And anybody want to contribute from the group? No, in that case, that's all.
Yeah, that point about where you mentioned the right audience, you can actually sort of help yourself to shepherd the right people to your session with a good description, right? So I'm probably most of us here read the description for this and thought, hey, yeah, that sounds like something I'd like to learn about. So, yeah, I think that's a really good point, because fun doesn't mean silly. You know, it doesn't have to mean silly. It can, yeah, it comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. But that's a really good point. I really like that one about being interactive. That seems really good. Perhaps someone from breakout room number 4, would they like to come forth and kind of share their room's outlook on the situation? What adult learners like?
I can represent us. We basically decided also that 5 was very important. That oh, you can't unmute. But similarly to group 2, that relating the material to people's lives and to problems that they have is absolutely essential. And some of the other ones about capitalizing on people's knowledge, that's definitely kind of in some way related to linking it to problems that they have or things that are concrete in their lives. And then following on that that fun is great and time for reflection are great if they can be built into it. But it's really the key ones are those where it's relating to people's lives, problems they have, their own experience, and that they can build meaning around it. And the one thing that we would add potentially is that the master facilitator is somebody who can almost like naturally do all of those things and really like bring them alive and kind of inspire people to inspire adults to make those connections, if you see what I mean, to do the work to connect the material to their lives and to make the meaning. And it's hard work. That's all I got to say. So thank you for hosting this session.
Cheers. Yeah, no, I don't know whether I'm doing quite that. I mean, me and Claire. But yeah, you're quite right. The kind of the role of the facilitator is integral to the whole process, right? You're like the conduit for all the learning and for the environment. And I guess you should try and lead by example. You'll have noticed probably actually that the one about fun is lowest down on my own personal priorities. That's why this is going to be as grueling as possible. Coming out of that, that's a really great discussion, and thanks for everyone for getting involved with it. Hopefully, I haven't checked the tab yet, but hopefully Claire has been able to jot down and capture some of your ideas or elaborations around the 5 original ideas in the Etherpad. And something, I guess, another, just to sort of a point to add, an interesting thing I read whilst I was doing my research is that learning occurs when behavior changes, and that's sort of the definition of learning, apparently. So this is not simply a matter of showing that you as the facilitator can do something, but demonstrating that they can do it themselves. And if you're able to offer people an opportunity to practice a skill within a workshop or a session, that is effectively them getting a chance to change their behavior by implementing the new things. So someone said being interactive and activities, that they are a great way to go with this. Talking of activities, what a segue, activity number 2. So activity number 1 was fairly structured, I guess. You were given this list of 5 things and asked to organize them. Activity number 2 is a little bit less structured. I should have noted actually that the the descriptions for the activities are actually written in the descriptions of each of the breakout rooms at the bottom. Unfortunately, there's no way to format the text in those descriptions. So it's a bit of a jumble, but all of the text is repeated in there if you ever need to refer to it. Now, activity number 2 is let me just check. Yep, is basically we've looked at our audience, and now we're going to look at the steps that we need to take in order to design a workshop specifically for our audience. So we're going to take kind of those priorities that we discussed and then think about how we plan a workshop that satisfies them. And so what we'd like you to do is we're going to ask you to go back into your rooms, your breakout groups, I should say, and write a best practice guide. So it's not a schedule for a specific workshop, though if you want to think about it that way to help jog your kind of thought process, that's probably a good way to go. But it's more about the steps that you would take in the planning process of planning your own workshop, including kind of bullet points on what you think would be the best practice, and perhaps any activities that you could think to include. Now, I am once again going to share my screen because we're going to give you, although I said it's not as structured, we are going to give you a prompt. So if I share a specific application, share that one, you should be able to see this now if I maximize it. So there are 3 bullet points that you've got here to kind of get you started. Bullet point number 1 actually is the question that I asked myself when I was planning this workshop. So maybe that's a good place to start. So asking yourself, what is the outcome or purpose of your session, and how will your participants benefit from attending? So that's the question you ask yourself when you're planning your own workshop. And a kind of best practice tip is to divide into small groups early and often, because people feel more comfortable sharing in smaller groups, and it gives more people the opportunity to be engaged and give input. And then the third point I've gotten here is an activity idea. So you'll notice this is the activity that we actually just completed. So get the groups to organize a list in order of importance and kind of draw out the reasoning for that, and have a sort of reflection of their own experiences based on that reasoning. So those are the 3 points that you've got to kind of start you on this task. So to reiterate what I've text underneath that I've written, use your own experiences and ideas to add to this list to create a guide of questions that you'd ask yourself, and ideas for how you would design your own workshop. So it doesn't have to be specific to a particular field. It's kind of like a general guide for creating any sort of online workshop for adults. So I've stopped sharing there, I think. So back into this room. What time is it now? So it's just about 10 to 9. Wow, time flies. So let's say 10 minutes. So back here at 9 o'clock. So everyone, same breakout rooms as before. Please get stuck in and start kind of coming up with a best practice, like a guide to how to create a workshop. Go. All right, I'm broadcasting, which in the main room, which probably means that you can, if you kept this tab open, you can hear it in all of your side rooms, which is probably really disorientating. But yes, please kind of wrap up any of those discussions that you're having and join me back in here for a moment. Let's have a look here. So hopefully I've got most of you back in here now. What I was going to say is we have gone over slightly on the time for the with the last discussion, inevitable, I guess. And it's good, everyone's really enthusiastic, which is nice. And so what I'm going to do here is chop it up a little bit. I'm going to show you something which I think you might find useful, and then you could hopefully use this to start planning your own workshop, because we think that activity would be really beneficial. So yes, something that a kind of a technique which I wanted to share for you with for planning a workshop. By the way, I heard some great ideas going on in the discussions there. Because I don't have time in this part now for everyone to come up and do a bit. I'll just share a couple which we overheard. From group 2, they were talking about joining instructions, and I think that's an amazing point, especially for an online event. If you can send comprehensive instructions to your audience beforehand to say, this is what you'll need. This workshop will be looking at how to change a wheel on a bike. For this workshop, it would be great if you had a 20mm spanner and a bike, and a spare tire or something like that. So it's yeah, giving really clear joining instructions is a really great tip on planning an online workshop. And then someone group 1 said understanding your audience. So at the beginning, double checking what your audience are there for and what they really want to get out of it, because you might have some amount of scope to tailor, even though you'll have planned a particular workshop, to tailor it slightly to what they want to get out of it. So you're going to end up with a happier cohort of people. Yes, and the part, if I go to screen sharing, share an application window, it's not appearing. There we go. Sorry, technology's failing me. There we go. So hopefully you can see this discussion 2 that I have up on the screen, and this is a something apparently that came out of the research of Malcolm S. Knowles, looking at delivery of workshops and workshop planning in general. And there's something called the ADIDS, which is you have an activity, a discussion, input, deepening, and then synthesis. So just to run through this as like this is the format I used for this workshop. So love it or hate it, I guess. But you have an activity, so you bring people in with something that connects them to the topic of the session, and ideally lets them use their own experiences as we did. So hi, I tricked you into learning. Then we have a discussion afterwards where we share our ideas, and then ideally the facilitator then has some input to those ideas to kind of enhance things, or perhaps add things which they know and were missing from the initial discussion. Then you have a deepening process, which is where you ideally get to put to use what you've learned, and that's what we're about to do. So in any second now, I'm going to let you loose again back into your rooms to actually plan a workshop, and perhaps you want to just choose one topic or one workshop and plan it together, or perhaps you want to just start planning your own, perhaps using a structure like this ADIDS one, and then finally you have some form of summary or synthesis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this screen up as sharing on here, and I will mute myself in this room again, so everyone kind of go back to your breakout rooms and actually start with the notes you'd already made in that second activity, plus this structure which I've left up on the screen. Have a go at starting to actually plan a workshop now, and we'll see how far we get. If we have just 5 minutes on this, just because it would be great to have the discussion afterwards. So it's not very long, but if we have 5 minutes, which brings us back in here at 12 minutes past, and I'm going to have to be quite strict about that just because of just because we have to finish at 9:30. So we've got 14 minutes left before 9:30 to kind of try and share some of the big points that came out of those 2 activities, I guess. So we'll go around and starting with group 1 again. Could someone jump on? And I guess we spoke about the kind of the best practice. Yeah. So we got the best practice, and then also, yeah, well, just talk about what you talked about, and I'm sure that would be fantastic.
I did try to make sure it wasn't going to be me, but it is me. I'm sorry, John. So I guess a few things came up that we thought were quite important. So obviously defining the audience and understanding your audience, and then defining the subject matter based on that is quite key, and really making a decision as to whether you're going to be advertising to all and letting anybody join, or if you're going to have a sign up, or you're actually going to charge them a couple of quid, you know, whatever it may be, depending on what you want to teach and how you want your subject to go. I think facilitators, it was said that was going to be really, really important, possibly a few in a couple of rooms, particularly if you had any technical issues. At least if somebody fell off the ether, 1 or 2 other people could pick up and help other people get in. We talked a little bit about advertising, obviously the importance of joining instructions and managing people's expectations and being able to get hold of people if they couldn't get in. So a lot of technical stuff. Yeah, that was probably our big subjects.
That's awesome. And I'm just going to put in something that I overheard in another group. So sorry if you were planning on saying this, other group. But when you said planning around your audience, I think another idea is there was a discussion going on about safety. And if you are defining your audience and you've got safety concerns, you could specify that, like, it's kind of like when you say you have to be semi-competent, that kind of thing. So less chance then at that stage you can mitigate risk, hopefully for safety in that stage. So that's really, really good point. And thanks for sharing those. I was going to say actually that there's been so many great ideas, and during this part here, Claire is probably desperately trying to write them into the Etherpad, but we're inevitably not going to get to share them all. So if you are able to, please stick around after the session officially ends to add your ideas to the Etherpad, because it'd be great to capture them. So that's enough from me. Someone from group 2, would you like to come forward and just share some of the things that you were talking about?
Okay, that is us. Right, I'll give you a quick summary. I think so. So what was it? We were talking about really the importance of social interactions between the attendees. So our discussion was mainly kind of around social interactions. Beforehand, we had ideas of doing show and tells as like a way of getting the members of your group to feel comfortable sharing what they were doing. Having time during the session just for general chat, like, what's happened to you this week, Sue, or how's your week gone? Don't just focus on the technical content, but remember to include what you would have had around tea and biscuits if it was a physical meeting. You still need the tea and biscuits. It's binding people together socially, overcoming the loneliness. Members have said that's been the biggest benefit during lockdown of just having the online sessions. Yeah. It's just seeing another human. Some of them, it's the only other human being they talk to once a week. So, yeah, I think that's what most of the comments are around.
I absolutely love that quote. We still need the tea and biscuits. I'm absolutely
biscuits.
That's really, really good. You're totally right. It's probably something that we kind of left out of the planning of this workshop. In fact, hopefully we'll end up having discussions in your breakout rooms when the numbers became smaller. But I think you're totally right. It's and maybe that feeds into that point about fun. Maybe that is that kind of social side of things. The human element. That's really brilliant. Thanks for sharing that. That's definitely more great points to add. Can someone from group number 3 perhaps come forward then and share some of their ideas? I'm desperately writing them down. Yeah.
Cool. Hi, I'm Vanessa. So basically we covered a lot of what's been said in the other groups before about describing the event while setting the expectations of the participants. 2 other points that also came up were, first of all, thinking about marketing. So where do you actually find the people that you'd like to join your session? So someone else in the group said many of the people who come to their repair cafes, they might not be on Facebook, they might not be online in the spaces where you normally advertise events. So how can you still find them? How can they still join? And the second point was to also not prepare too much material and to just bombard them with the PowerPoint basically, but to also leave room for interactions, for discussions, and for just letting that knowledge sink in with all the participants.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, and there's a real fine balance there because some people will turn up to something that's like advertised as a learning event and expect a lot of prescriptive information. They're like, I'm there, I'm here to learn. I don't know this stuff yet. I want you to tell me the right way of doing something. But then there's a real balance, like you said, you can let death by PowerPoint, and you can be overly prescriptive. And I think there was a note when we were talking about adult learners wanting to take their own meanings. And something I saw in the research I jotted down was that instead of giving people conclusions, try and give people the information from which they can draw their own conclusion, which is most relevant to them. So I think that's I think that's a really, really good point and great angle. And then we should move on then to group 4. Thank you very much for sharing that. So if someone from group 4 would like to come forth, which because obviously the numbering might be a bit confusing.
Hi. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, yeah, it's Mark here. So, I mean, we covered a lot of the things that the other groups have said, but probably the one thing, just to say something a little bit different, is that we thought about a few examples of quite tangible things that have been done recently. And one that we talked about was actually teaching people about Linux and doing an install on their computers. And what we realized was actually we shouldn't necessarily always think as it being a workshop. There actually could be real value in splitting a workshop up into maybe 3 workshops. One which is simply about educating people, having a discussion around Linux and what it is and the difference between it and Windows and why it may be beneficial. The second session might be actually about the install, where then obviously they'd have to be prepared with the computers, etc., etc. And then the third session could actually be about, okay, now you've got it in, here are some things you can do with it, so that you're not trying to do everything all in one workshop, because it's maybe just way too much for people to take on all in one go. There you go.
I couldn't agree more. That's a really, really good point. In fact, you've made me reflect on this.
I just wanted to say also, like, sometimes we think that we only have people's attention for, like, that people are only going to give us 45 minutes. You may have noticed that we originally said some of these sessions would only be 45 minutes. But actually, if people are really engaged and if you do a good job of outlining what people will get out of it, they'll come with you. And I think it's sometimes having the confidence to say, let's do more sessions. Let's do longer sessions.
Yeah, no, that ties in perfectly, and very good point. I think when I was doing research for this to try and look at the kind of other guides, they were like week-long courses where you would do 4 evenings across the course of a week. So we were quite ambitious to try and squeeze this into 90 minutes, and this is definitely one. I love the idea. We could have definitely done like a whole 90 minutes on just the kind of the planning part, right? And then maybe another whole 90 minutes on actually doing a plan and sharing the ideas for the tangible things, because sometimes these statements can sound a bit woolly, like create an inclusive environment, and that sounds great, and you're like, obviously yes, but how does that translate itself to an actual workshop plan? And that's sometimes that you really want to talk about the finer details. So yeah, like I said, I've been jotting these down and on some paper for, I don't know why, because Claire's already doing it in the Etherpad, but just force of habit. But they really are great. And like I said, please stick around if you can when we hit the 30-minute mark and have to end the session officially to add them to the Etherpad if things that haven't been verbalized yet, but you jotted them down yourselves, because they will go into one big document and we can send them out to everyone. The very last bit, which I promised, was about being a good host, and really the key points here, like I said, other than avoiding what I do, is to engage people immediately and all the way through. Actually, Janet, you've said something really good there, that people, if you are engaged throughout, you're not going to get bored, and suddenly a 45-minute workshop can be a 90-minute workshop if you keep people going, keep the energy going. Try to build personal relationships if you can, just by using people's names and welcoming them when they join. Also, the joining instructions here, so being a good host planning, I guess that there's a bit of overlap there, but sending out really comprehensive joining instructions is really important, so that they're well prepared for what you have planned for them. It also lets them know a little bit more what they're getting themselves into. And the final one on this point here is to make the most of your time as the facilitator. And generally the facilitator, not always, as in this workshop partly, generally the facilitator knows the most about the topic. And so don't turn your kind of class into like a one-on-one with 30 different people. You can't answer every single question. You just kind of have to respond to the ones that are most relevant and people as a group are going to get the most out of. So that's a really big point about kind of being an effective facilitator. So I guess to summarize some of the things from what I've been jotting down, because it says synthesis, end with a summary. We've kind of assessed that adults like to learn by doing things, and particularly if they can relate it to something that they know about or is going on in their lives. And as we saw, people relating it to Repair Cafe kind of events just happens very naturally. There are lots of good tips that have come out this evening about how to plan for a workshop. I tried to share the ADIDS thing, so having an activity, a discussion, then further input from the facilitator, and then some sort of activity that allows them to deepen their understanding of the content by actually putting it to use. and then S being the synthesis, which is what I'm trying to do now. And then, yeah, I guess the takeaway on being a host is to try and be as engaging as possible and create an environment where people feel comfortable sharing their ideas. And yeah, that's everything from me. As I meant, just to reassess, please write on the Etherpad under the attendance list if you would like to receive a copy of this kind of best practice guide. And I'd like to thank you all for taking part. It was really, really nice to hear the discussions. Claire, do you want to say anything on this to my incredibly important asylum compatriot?
Just to say, I was just looking on the chat, and obviously there was a bit of talk. I think I've been following that some of the groups might want to sort of reconnect. So if that is the case, I just suggest popping that onto the Etherpad, and I'm sure something can be organised in whichever room you were in. Stick which room you think you're in, something like that.
Yeah, the Etherpad is probably a good way of facilitating that, and I know Restart, I think, have people's contact details, so can kind of put people in contact with each other. So yeah, thank you very much, by the way, Claire. You were a delight to work with. I have to say that. It's been really good fun, and hopefully you've all enjoyed it. It's past. So yeah, I can stop the facade now. I'm not facilitating anymore. There we are. It's over. Does someone from Restart want to come and do a little?
Hi everybody. So thanks so much, John and Claire, for a wonderful session, and for helping us navigate the kind of intricate technical things. That was, first time we've tried it, and I think it went okay. So thanks so much.